And picture Radha Krishna in our mind. Visualize Radha and Krishna while we're singing their names. We'll be singing Radhe Govinda. Govinda, of course, is the name of Krishna. So let us visualize Radhe Govinda. Radhe Radhe Govinda, Govinda Radhe. श्यामा श्याम की जय। मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथो मद्गुरु श्री जगद्गुरु मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे करारविन्देन पदारविन्दम् मुखारविन्दे विनिवेशयन्तम् वटस्य पत्रस्य पुटेशयानम् बालं मुकुन्दं मनसा स्मरामि। अहो chitramaho chitram vande tat prema bandhanam yad baddham muktidam muktam brahma krida bhrigi kritam yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedanscha prahinoti tasmai tagmam ha devamatma buddhi prakasham mumukchurvai sharanamaham prapadye. The divine souls. So far in this series on the essence of all spiritual knowledge, paths, and practices, I explained that the ultimate aim of every soul is to attain God, because God is perfect happiness. We live in this Mayic world, but the world is not meant to supply us with perfect happiness. The world is necessary for our body, but our soul requires divine happiness, and that is only God. That is why no matter how much of this world we accumulate, we always feel that we need more, because we're not getting divine happiness from the world. We're only getting temporary pleasure. Divine happiness is unlimited and everlasting. In order to attain God, many paths have been promoted in the world. In order to sort out the difference between these paths, there is one main thing we have to look at. Is this path able to take us beyond Maya and join us with God? And we found that, in fact, there is only one path that can do that. That doesn't mean that other paths are incorrect. They are correct for what they're meant to give. Someone may ask if the performance of Vedic rituals and giving charity and performing one's duty in the world, we call this the path of karma. If the path of karma does not take one to God, doesn't result in God realization, then why is it in Vedas? Actually, there's a good reason for it. If somebody is not desiring God, they're only desiring worldly pleasures, what the path of karma says is, come, I'll give you those worldly pleasures. Perform these punya, sattvic karma. And as a result, you'll get good family welfare in your next life. You'll have a good destiny. You'll be born in a good family. You won't struggle too much, economically speaking. How do you earn this? By doing all these good karma in this life. You may even get to go to Swarga temporarily. So the person who's desiring these material things, are they going to get God from that path? No. But what they are doing is they're disciplining their mind, they're diverting their mind towards something good. Because to attain all these things, you have to perform this ritual which demands you to be faithful, and there's a word arjavam, uprightness, straightforwardness, giving charity. So it demands all of these things from you which are good. It's making your mind good, which is bringing you more towards the side where one day you may start thinking about attaining God. In other words, it's developing the good quality of your mind. Not everybody is at the same level. Not everybody is ready to start thinking, what do I have to do to attain God in this life? Very few people are at that level. Ved provides something for everybody, no matter where they are. That is why all these other paths are there. Somebody is more physically oriented. Okay, you do yoga. Why? You'll learn to calm your mind through these yogic practices. Once you've calmed your mind, then what do? Surrender your mind to God. In other words, now start bhakti. All these are a way of bringing a person towards the path of bhakti. What I mean to say is that one shouldn't denounce these other paths or think that someone following them is doing something wrong. They're not. But we have to understand how far can each path take you. The path of bhakti is the only path that takes you all the way to God. As I explained yesterday, the reason is surrender is required to attain God. We can't attain God through our own effort. Our effort in the path of bhakti is directed to getting our heart and mind to surrender to God. Our effort is not in thinking that I'll reach God through my own undertaking. No. What God is waiting for me, but I haven't turned to Him. I haven't even sincerely asked Him for His grace. Sincerely asking God for His grace is surrender. That is bhakti. But to reach that state of total surrender takes time. So there has to be a practice of devotion. How do I do bhakti? This is where we come today, because we've learned and understood that bhakti is the only way to reach God. All other, see, we're trying to simplify, right? We're trying to get the essence. We have all this knowledge and all these paths. So now we've given you a structure that you can use. You can understand, okay, all these other paths are good, but they don't take me all the way to God. If I want God, I have to do bhakti. Simple. Now, how do I do bhakti, devotion to God? It's a big question, because if you look at the history and even today, nowadays in this world, there are many, many people teaching to do devotion in many different ways. Why is this so? And how do we find, is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? What's the way I should be doing? The first difference that comes is when somebody says, I'm worshiping this form of God, and somebody else says, I'm worshiping this form of God. Then we feel a type of confusion. Why are there different forms of God? Is there a right form? Which form should I worship? You notice I'm using the word form of God. I'm not saying, should I worship this God or that God? I'm not saying there are many gods. There's one God. That one God has many forms. In the Bhagavatam, again, Vedavyas Ji has simplified, given us a structure to understand the whole thing. He says, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. One single supreme God appears in three main categories. If all of God's powers are subsided, like you when you go to sleep at night, when you're fast asleep, someone can look at you, they don't know, you may be a very kind person. They don't know that by seeing you sleep. So your kindness is not manifested when you're sleeping. You may be very intelligent. You can't tell that by watching a person sleep. In other words, all their qualities are dormant when they're sleeping. This is like God. If all of his qualities and powers are dormant, he is formless. We call that Nirakar Brahma. Formless God has no qualities manifested outwardly, but all the qualities are there, just like in you. Your strength, your intelligence, your kindness, whatever qualities you have, they're there when you're sleeping. They're just not manifested. It means that God's form is there, but it's not manifested as formless God. Formless God is not someone else. It's the same God as Krishna or Vishnu or Durga, just with no qualities manifested. Now, take your situation again. Let's say now you're awake and you go to the office. Maybe you put a suit on, you have a particular uniform you wear, something like that. When you're in the office, there's a certain expectation of how you have to behave. There's a certain formality required. Same with kids at school. When the kids are sitting in the classroom, there's a certain formality required. They can't just play and do whatever they want and say whatever they want. Same with you in the office. You're a little more structured, serious, formal. Bhagwan also has a form like this. So we started with formless. Now we come to the second category, Almighty God. God when he's at the office. Serious. He has work to do. You can think of one example of this form of God as Vishnu. Vishnu holds weapons in his hands. He stands very straight. Although his face is kind, but he's also serious. This is the almighty form of God. And there are, in fact, many almighty forms of God. Shiv Ji is also an almighty form of God. Durga Ji is also an almighty form of God. Many almighty forms. Now we come to the third category. Like you, when you come home from the office, now you don't have the same restrictions on your behavior. You relax, you joke around, you behave more lovingly. In other words, you let even more of your personality show, or you can say you let your total personality show. Let's say maybe your work is you're a Supreme Court judge. When you come home, are you still a Supreme Court judge? Yes, you are, but the loving side of your personality now takes control. You're still a judge, but does your daughter care that you're a judge? No, you're my mom, you're my dad. That's all your daughter or your son cares, right? So in that environment, that seriousness gets merged into the lovingness. This is what happens in this third category we call loving form of God. There are two main loving forms of God. Krishna or Radha Krishna and Ram or Sita Ram. You may think about the fact that Ram and Krishna do leelas, right? There's a lot of leelas. Leelas means what activities did they do? What actions did they do when they were on earth? Their leelas are sometimes playful in the case of Krishna, loving, but they're very much something we can relate to. Just like you can relate more to your parents when they come home, rather than if you go to the court and you see your mother or father sitting as a Supreme Court judge, you can't go and sit on their lap. They're in the courtroom. So similarly, the loving form of God, Ram and Krishna, they're revealing that loving side. In other words, they're revealing their total personality. And just like in your case, the loving side overcomes the serious side if you allow it to come out. So Ram and Krishna reveal the totality of their personality. If they are restricting that lovingness, then they come in the category of Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, the almighty category. And if they are concealing all of their powers and qualities, they are formless God. Is this three different gods? No. Three different states or three different forms of one God. Just like water can be liquid, it can be frozen, it can be a solid form, and it can be a vapor form, steam. But it's the same thing. That water can be turned into ice, that water can be turned into steam. But in God's case, there's one difference. God doesn't have to jump back and forth. Like Krishna doesn't have to think, now I have to become Vishnu. Oh, now let me become formless. Now let me become Krishna again. God exists in all those forms simultaneously and eternally, all the time. God has no restrictions or limitations. Why am I telling you all of this? Because people they feel confused. This saint Tulsidas Ji said to worship Ram. This saint Ramakrishna Paramahans said to worship Durga Mata. This saint Mirabai said to worship Krishna. This saint Upamanyu said to worship Shivji, Shankar. So we feel confused. Which one should I worship? Is one better than the other? Is one right? Is one wrong? That would be like saying, let's say you have a picture of your husband on the wall. And in that picture, he's wearing kurta pajama. And then you have another picture of him over here wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And over here, you have another picture of him dressed in full cricket gear. Do you feel it's three different people? If someone in your family thinks, oh, I like this picture of Papa in the cricket gear. And then the wife thinks, no, I like this picture of him in his kurta pajama. And the son thinks, no, I like this picture of him in the shorts and a t-shirt. So, उनके बीच में लड़ाई होगी क्या? नहीं. Everybody's happy. Oh, mama likes that picture. She likes this picture. He likes that picture. Everybody understands it's three pictures of the same person. Similarly, God is not different gods. It's one God appearing in different forms. You choose the one that you feel more attracted to. Now, just like I explained, God is revealing different sides of his personality in these different forms. So if you feel like, I want to meet God in his most loving form, I don't want any formality. In fact, I want to play with him. I want to tackle him. I want to tell him jokes. Then go to Krishna. If you think, no, I want to be able to talk to him personally, but I want a little bit of formality, then go to Ram. Just like Vibhishan and Ram, Sugriv and Ram, they used to sit and talk, but formally. Not like Krishna's sakhas jumping on him, right? So if you want to be able to do anything with Krishna, then go to Krishna. If you think, no, I like a little formality, I want to be like Sugriv or Vibhishan, then go to Ram. If you think, no, I want to see him as the king, the master of the universe, go to Vishnu, Shiva, Durga. They're the almighty form. So you have choices. There's no right and wrong, but the experience will be different. Even after God realization, the experience will be different. When you get God realized, if you worship Vishnu, then you'll receive divine eyes and you'll get to meet him face to face and you'll see his infinite divine beauty. And from that, you'll get perfect happiness. If you meet Ram, if you worship Ram, you'll meet Ram. Then with Ram, you'll get to have more personal interaction. And if you meet Krishna, you'll get to play with him with total freedom. So that you can say they all give unlimited bliss in all those forms. They're giving unlimited bliss, but the flavor of that bliss is different. They are not different gods, but one God giving us different flavors of divine bliss. Therefore, choose according to what you wish to experience now and after God realization. Some saints have attained Bhagwan Shankar Ji. So that divine saint is one with God in the form of Shankar Ji. He sees Lord Shankar everywhere. He experiences the bliss, divine bliss through the form of Lord Shankar. And he teaches anyone who comes to him how to worship, how to do devotion to Bhagwan Shankar. It's natural. Another saint has attained God in the form of Ram. He's experiencing, everywhere he looks, he sees only Ram. He's experiencing divine bliss through the form of Ram. He meets Ram and talks to him, and whatever people of this world comes to him or her, they teach them, love Bhagwan Ram, how to do bhakti to Bhagwan Ram. Is one right and one wrong? No, both are correct. Just different flavors of the divine bliss that they're sharing with the souls of this world. And then, of course, traditions are formed in the names of these great saints. We call them sampradaya. So there are many sampradaya, lineages of great saints who worship Bhagwan Shankar, many great saints who worship Vishnu or Ram or Krishna or Durga. There's no confusion there. It's all good. It's all correct. All these saints were correct, and they're all teaching the right thing. They can only give the bliss that they themselves have attained. So they're not going to teach devotion to another form of God. They'll teach devotion to the form of God they have attained. Therefore, we shouldn't feel upset or confused when we see there's so many different forms of God that people worship. Well, it's a good thing. It's one God in all these forms. You have a choice. So this is the first thing about the path of bhakti. Don't worry about there being many choices. Turn your mind to the form that is most natural for you and the relationship you want to have with God. Accordingly, choose one of those categories. Now, someone may say, okay, that's fine. I understand that there are many forms of God and you can worship God in any of these forms. That's fine. Not many gods, many forms of one God. But even one, let's take one form of God, Krishna. Even in the traditions of how you worship Krishna, there are so many different ways taught. Some say do japa, some say do kirtan, some say do murti seva, murti pujan. Some say do meditation. Some say go and visit the holy places. Some say do pat, read the divine scriptures. So again, we get confused. Why are there so many different paths told? Now, the whole purpose of this week is to simplify, find the essence. So let us again go back to the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam acknowledges that there are many ways to worship God. All of those ways to worship God are generally summarized into 9 types of worship. We call it Navadha Bhakti. Prahlad revealed this to his father, Hiranyakashipu. Kirtanam, Shravanam, Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyamatmanivedanam. Shravanam, that's what you're doing right now. You're listening to the philosophy. You can also listen to the Leelas. Someone can tell you about Ram's Leelas or Krishna's Leelas. Shravana Bhakti. Then you can do Kirtan. We were doing that in the beginning. Chant God's names, chant any bhajan written by a saint describing God. You can do Smaran, means thinking of God, remembering Him. You can do Pada Sevanam, serve His lotus feet. Archanam means puja, you can offer items. Vandanam, you can sing His glories in the form of shloks or mantras. Dasyam, you feel that you're His servant. Sakhyam, you feel that you're His friend. Atmanivedanam, you do samarpan of even your own soul, your own self. You feel that everything, including myself, is yours. Atmanivedanam. This is called Navadha Bhakti. 9 different ways of doing bhakti. bhakti. That includes all the ways. There could be infinite ways of doing bhakti. Okay, so we simplified it to 9. However, in the Bhagavatam, there's a place where it's further boiled down to 3. Parikshit is the Shrota of the Bhagavatam. He's the one asking the questions. And Shukdev Ji is his guru. He is the Bhakta. He is the one revealing the knowledge of the Bhagavatam. Parikshit asks him, I only have 7 days to live. It's been told to me, I've been cursed, that I'm going to be bitten by a poisonous snake in 7 days. So what should I do for these 7 days? How should I spend my time? Shukadev Ji said, Shravanam, Kirtanam. He said, look, God is the soul of your soul. So therefore, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Tasmat Sarvatra Sarvada. Everywhere, all the time. What should you do? Remember the soul of your soul. Harihi Sarvatra Sarvada Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Smartavyo Bhagavan Nirnam. So he says, Tasmat Sarvatmana Rajan. Listen, King, the soul of your soul is Shri Krishna. Isliye Sarvatra Sarvada. All the time, everywhere. What should I do? Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Smartavyaha. 3 things. These 3 were also in the 9. The Navadha Bhakti has now been boiled down to 3. If you do these 3, you've done everything. What is it? Shravanam means the listening part. Kirtanam, the chanting of God's names and virtues. And Smaranam, remembering or thinking about God. Now the whole practice of bhakti has been boiled down to 3 things in the Bhagavatam. We can do better than that, however. Shukdev Ji, at another place in the Bhagavatam, he tells, Bhagavan Brahmakartsnena Triranvichya Manishaya Tadadhyavasyat Kutastho Ratiratman Yatha Bhavet. How to do bhakti? He says, look, Brahma knows all the scriptures. Brahma, the one who created our Brahman. He knows all the scriptures. And Triranvichya Manishaya, using his divine intellect, he went through all the scriptures, means Vedas, Puranas, Gita, Mahabharata, Darshan Shastras. 3 times he went through the whole thing to find out what is the main thing in all of this. And it turned out, Tadadhyavasyat Kutastho Ratiratman Yatha Bhavet. Whatever increases your love for Shri Krishna, that is the main thing. Dhyan. See, how do you love someone? It doesn't happen. Love is not something that happens. Love is something you do. How do you do it? You keep thinking. You saw someone the first time, you thought, oh, they're beautiful. You had one positive thought about them. Then you observe them some more. No, really, they're beautiful. Now you're doing chintan. You're visualizing that person's mind. You're visualizing that person's face in your mind. That's called chintan or smaran. Remember, smaran bhakti was one of them. You're visualizing them in your mind. And you're also thinking, oh, they're very kind. They're very generous. I like the sound of their voice. Oh, I want to meet them. What is this? This is meditation. You're doing dhyan on that person. And through that positive thinking, you developed love for them. We call it love. It's an attachment of the mind. Every positive thought creates an attachment. Then because of that attachment, you feel love for that person. If you have negative thinking towards someone, you develop a negative attachment, and through that you feel hate for that person. Both love and hate are developed in our mind by our thinking. They don't just arise automatically. They come because of our thinking. This dhyan, this smaran, if we do this for God in a positive way, that is called smarana bhakti. So Shukdev Ji said that Brahma scoured the scriptures 3 times over and came up with this as the essence of everything, remembering God. So remember, out of all the types of bhakti, 9 are main, Navadha bhakti. Out of those 9, 3 are main, Shravan, Kirtan, Smaran. And out of those 3, Smaran is main. Why? Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayo. Ved tells us the mind alone is responsible for our bondage and for our liberation. Why? Vishayan dhyayataschittam vishayeshu vishajjate mamanusmarataschittam mayyeva praviliyate. Again from the Bhagavatam, Shri Krishna tells Uddhav, if you do smarana of the world, you get attached in the world, so you'll attain the world. You'll be reborn in the world. If you do loving remembrance of me, if you do smarana of me, you will ultimately attain a state of union with me, and you will attain me. The mind is the crucial element. Where the mind is attached, that's what we attain. It's the mind that has to be surrendered. I said the goal of devotion is to become surrendered to God. What has to be surrendered? Do you say, Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama? Verbal surrender. If that was all that was required, we would all be God realized 1,000,000 times over. Is it doing pranam before God? Physical surrender? No, otherwise we all would be God realized already. It's mental surrender. The mind has to be surrendered to God. Therefore, the mind has to do bhakti. That is why smaran is main. It is the mind that does smaran, and it is all the other senses and parts of the body that do all the other types of bhakti. Shravan, the ears. Kirtan, the voice. Archanam, the hands. Going to holy places, the feet. Doing pranam, the head. Only the mind does smaran. So it is the mind that has to do bhakti, and doing bhakti with the mind means doing smaran of God, attaching your mind to God, remembering God with positive feelings. Or just like I was describing, you picture that person's face in your mind. Picture the form of God that you're worshiping. That is the essence. See, that's what this topic is called for this week, the essence of all spiritual knowledges, paths, and practices. So let us now go to Veda Vyas, the writer and reproducer of all our Sanskrit scriptures. He also says, Meri bhi sun lo. He says, Alodya sarva shastrani vicharya cha punah punah. I also did manthan. When you do manthan, the best thing rises to the top. You do manthan of milk, churn the milk, the cream, the best part rises to the top. This is, I did manthan, alodya sarva shastrani, all the scriptures. Punaha, punaha, over and over again. He knows all those scriptures. He went through all of them over and over. And he says, idamekam sunishpannam. One nishkarsh came out. One essence came out. What is it? Dhyeyo narayano hari. One word. Dhyeyaha. Dhyan. Can you imagine? Out of all that knowledge, I told you 1 lakh Vedic mantras, 4 lakh shloks of Quran, 1 lakh Mahabharat shloks, 6 darshan shastras, etc., etc., etc. Out of all of that, he said the essence is one word, dhyeya. Dhyeyo narayano harihi. Meditate on Hari. Keep God in your mind. That is the essence. All scriptures and saints agree with this. Then why is somebody saying do kirtan and somebody saying do jap and somebody saying do murti puja? That's their way of engaging their mind. That's the key. This is the essence. All those ways of doing devotion are correct. None of them are wrong, if they're being done in order to engage the mind in remembering God. And if they're simply being done physically or verbally without the engagement of the mind, then they're all wrong. So they're either all right or all wrong. They're correct if they're being used to, this thing helps me remember God. When I visit this holy place in India, I remember that over here Krishna did this Leela. So then visiting that holy place helped me remember God. It's good. But did physically going there guarantee me anything? No. The mental attachment increased. Sitting and doing kirtan helps me focus my mind on remembering the form of God. So the kirtan is effective. If I'm just chanting verbally and I'm thinking about what our devotees have made for dinner tonight, then I'm actually doing bhakti of the khana. I'm not doing bhakti of Bhagwan. Wherever our mind is, usi ki bhakti ho rahi hai. This is the crux. This is the essence of everything. The mind should be in God. Then do whatever physical bhakti helps you keep your mind in God. Could be jap, could be kirtan, could be murti puja. It could be just sitting quietly and meditating on God. Whatever works for you, but the mind has to be in God. Manera smarana prana. Thakur Mahashay says that the life of devotion, the life of all spiritual practices is keeping the mind in God. Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj says in his Bhakti Shatak, सौ बातन की बात एक धरु मुरली धर ध्यान बड़वहु सेवा वासना यह सौ ज्ञानन ज्ञान राधे राधे यह सौ ज्ञानन ज्ञान. The essence of all spiritual practices is dharu murali dhar dhyan. Keep the whole, it's hard to translate it as poetically in English. Your mind should be holding the holder of the flute. That's what it means. Murali dhar is Krishna, the holder of the flute. So dharu means to hold, keep. Dharu dhyan. Keep the remembrance of the holder of the flute in your mind. He says that's the essence of all spiritual practices. Fir kuch bhi karo, do anything, it's fine, it's all correct. And yah sau gyanan gyan, badabahu seva vasana. Increase your desire to serve your divine beloved Krishna. That is the essence of all the spiritual knowledges. If you've understood this much, you have all the knowledge of Vedas. That's it. You know this much, I just have to join my mind with God. Sab kuch samajh mein aa gaya. You don't need to read anything more. Ab karna hai. Now we have to do it. But how to do it? The question comes. Arjun said to Shri Krishna, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramathi balabadridham. Tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram In the Gita, Arjun complained that you're telling me to attach my mind to you. My mind is more fickle than the wind. It would be easier to control the wind than my mind. It's going here and there. It's impetuous. It's balavati. I can't control it, Krishna. So Krishna said, Asanshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam. Yes, Arjuna, I accept that the mind is difficult to control. However, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. If you practice, you can learn to control it. So what is the practice? I'm going to tell you tomorrow. Tomorrow is the final in this 4-day series. So tomorrow we come to where we needed to get all along. Knowledge is no good if it remains in the theoretical form. The knowledge has to be transferred into practice. So what to practice in order to be able to keep our mind in God, I'll be explaining tomorrow. Bolo Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki. We have a few minutes left for questions, if anyone wants to ask anything. Anything anybody wants to ask today? So today you might have understood that these designations we give, this person is Vaishnava, this person is Shaiv, this person is Shakt, devotee of Durga, this person is Smart. We have these 4 divisions, right? And then people think, which one is right? Today you learn they're all right. It's a question of which form of God you want to worship. And then within each, you have various sampradaya. Within, if you're a Vaishnava, then are you a follower of Swami Haridas Ji's sampradaya, Hitta Harivancha's sampradaya, Jagadguru Nimbarkacharya's sampradaya, Jagadguru Ramanujacharya's sampradaya, Jagadguru Madhvacharya's sampradaya? Which sampradaya do you follow? People kind of try to feel, I'm following this sampradaya and this is right and that sampradaya is wrong. No, you're just following the tradition established by a particular saint who said, although attaching your mind to God is the main thing, I'm prescribing this particular practice in order to attach your mind. And another saint prescribed a slightly different practice, but the goal of both is the same, to attach your mind to the form of God that you're worshiping. So there is no jhagada. In fact, Kripaluji Maharaj said there's really only 2 sampradaya. Yesterday I told you the Vedic verse, Tayo Shreya Adadanasya Sadhu Bhavati Hiyater Thadya Upreyo Vrinite Kathopanishad. There's 2 paths. If you're trying to reach God in order to attain perfect happiness, you're following Shreya Marga. And if you're trying to get perfect happiness from the Mayic world, you're following Preya Marga. So there's only 2 sampradaya. If you're trying to reach God, you're part of the Bhagavat sampradaya. And if you believe perfect happiness can be had from Maya, you're following the Mayic sampradaya. So all the ones, whatever form of God they're worshiping, whatever saint tradition they're following, they're all part of the Bhagavat sampradaya. Kripaluji Maharaj gives another example. He says, take Shankaracharya's sampradaya. Shankaracharya's guru was Govinda Padacharya. His guru was Gauda Padacharya. His guru was Shukdev Paramahansa. His guru was Vedavyas Ji. His guru was Narad Ji. His guru was Brahma, and his guru was Shri Krishna. So Maharaji says, why are we calling it Shankaracharya's sampradaya? Why not call it Shri Krishna's sampradaya? Same thing, you can take every single sampradaya back to God himself. So that's what he's saying. Why are we calling it by the individual saint? You just call it God's sampradaya. They're all God's sampradaya. This is the knack that Kripaluji Maharaj had. What I'm sharing with you this week, how we're getting to the essence of everything and simplifying everything, this is the way that Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj taught. In fact, that's why he received the title of Jagadguru, because the scholars of Kashi were so impressed, not only by his knowledge, but his ability to do this reconciliation. He didn't try to refute anybody's teachings. He showed how they're all correct. You need a higher perspective to see how they're all interrelated. So he gave that structure to be able to understand how the various forms of God are interrelated, the various paths are interrelated, and even the different sampradaya within the path of bhakti are interrelated. No questions today? Yes.
Let me try. You talked about many forms of God, and I think that needs to be manifestations of God.
Yeah.
Now, if we understand India, Bharat, then we have to understand that there are lots of so-called gurus who are self-realized God, and that's why we follow them, they have a sampradaya. Now let's go outside India, and the so-called lots of religions have come out. In every country, there must be somebody who has self-realized God, and people have started following them. And going beyond all these things, when none of them are there, we go to Sanatana Dharma, which is eventually I think was Krishna. So why don't they have that inside of the Sanatana Dharma that we keep saying that God is one, but why do we not eventually come down to what was before, for example, Christianity or Judaism?
We can summarize the whole situation like this, that other religions also follow the same God. Just like I was explaining that within Hinduism, we're not worshiping different gods, but different forms of the same God. It's the same with other religions. Where the difference comes as far as how it comes across is that in other religions, they don't describe the form of God. The description of God is remains on the more general level. So they may say things similar to how we say God is almighty, God is all powerful, God knows everything, God created the world. These are all similarities between all the Ishwarvadi religions. But the depth of the description will vary, right, in the different traditions. So in those other religions, they remain on the more general level without getting into such detail as we have in Sanatana Dharma. Are they talking about a different God? No. They have a different name for God, that's fine, but God can only be one. God cannot even be two. They're also worshiping the same God, they just have a different style of description, and the descriptions in the various religions are more general or have slightly more detail. And then in Sanatana Dharma, we have the maximum amount of detail, which is why we have all the actual forms described. So today I wanted to conclude again by calling your attention to Prem Ras Siddhant. I mentioned Jagadguru Shree Kripaluji Maharaj. Although he was able to impress the greatest scholars, pundits, Vidwan of India during his lifetime, but his real goal was to guide ordinary souls like us. So he summarized all of this information in this one book, Prem Ras Siddhant, which we have in his original Hindi that he produced, and also we have an English translation. So I recommend reading it in Hindi if you're a Hindi reader, but if you read it in English, it's also a very good translation. This book, Prem Ras Siddhant, not very thick, it has the whole essence of what we're discussing in a little bit more detail. And then this is more of a slightly more beginner book, 76 most common questions about Hinduism, 1-page answers for very common questions. So if I just randomly open it somewhere, the question number 50 is, why does God create the world? Normal question that everybody has, 1-page answer. Another one, why are some people evil? Again, according to Hindu philosophy, 1-page answer. So all these simple questions and short answers are here. I would say from maybe age 8 and up would even be able to read this, and it's good for adults as well. So this is more of a just beginner level, and then Prem Ras Siddhant gets into more actual detail about what is the path, how to perform bhakti, all the things you need to know to follow this path in your life.